Welcome, everyone. It's so good to have you join us today to support the Saskatchewan Library Association's One Book, One Province initiative. I'm Melissa Just, and I'm the Dean of the University Library here at the University of Saskatchewan. As I'm sure many of you probably already know, the One Book, One Province initiative aims to increase literacy and to create a reading culture by providing opportunities for residents across the province to become more socially connected with one another and in their communities through engagement with a shared story. Stories and storytelling are an important part of our university library, and we also aspire to be an intellectual hub where people and information and ideas come together and connect to create and share knowledge. This connection can be a really powerful one, and it's great to have everyone on this call today to help us create that community and to have this diverse range of expertise represented on today's panel. I want to give a special thank you to our panelists for being part of our conversation today. I was excited to hear that the book chosen this year is a cookbook, but not only a cookbook. Habib Salloum's Arab Cooking on a Prairie Homestead describes what Sarah Carter calls in her foreword to the latest edition, delectable recipes. But it also interweaves throughout those recipes personal recollections and traditional stories of the experiences of Arab settlers on the prairies. And these stories are ones of exceptional resilience and innovation, of community, all with impact on Western Canadian culture. I will admit that I am not a great cook, but during the pandemic, I took up cheese making, and it's become a pretty serious hobby for me. So you can only imagine how delighted I was to find in this book, chapter 6, Kishk, the oldest and healthiest cheese. And I was so inspired by the story of how nourishing and healthy the staple is that I decided to give it a go. So Kishk starts with yogurt, which I made and then drained to make labna, which I then mixed with bulgur and fermented for 10 days, carefully tending it each day to make sure to bring out all the flavors. The recipe calls for breaking up the mixture and drying it outdoors in the sun. Apparently in the Middle East, this would typically happen on a home's rooftop. And presumably here in Saskatchewan, this is meant to be a summer recipe because clearly right now, even though there's a nice bright sun, the best I could probably hope for would be freeze drying. So I took the alternative approach, and that was mentioned in the book, and I dried it in the oven. And here is the finished product. I have a jar of kishk powder here. And it's really tasty. It's tangy and nutty and crunchy and full of umami flavor. But ultimately, this recipe doesn't result so much in food as it results in an ingredient to make food. So now I'm looking forward to using the kishk in another one of the book's many recipes. So perhaps as a base for a soup or in a lentil stew. Although Habib passed away in 2019, his book remains in print and continues to be the subject for discussions like the ones we're about to hear. So I'd like for us to get things underway. I will introduce our moderator, Rana Awada. Dr. Awada is a senior policy fellow in food security at the Johnson Shoyama School of Public Policy at the University of Saskatchewan. She holds a PhD in agricultural economics, an MSc in business economics and management, and a BSc in commerce. And I'm grateful to you, Dr. Awada, and to all of our speakers today for being part of this event. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy today's discussion. Dr. Awada.
Thank you very much, Dr. Just, for the introduction. I just want to tell you that I'm from Lebanon, and I went step by step with my grandma making the kishk. And this is one of the most difficult things to do. You know, they spent all the summer doing it. So congratulations, you are able to do it. Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm very excited about all the conversations we are going to have today. This book and the topic in general are very close to my heart, being also an immigrant coming from an Arabic country, Lebanon, as I mentioned before. Let me now just say a few words about our three speakers who are very much related culturally and professionally to our book, The Arab Cooking on a Prairie Homestead by Habib Salloum. I will start introducing our first speaker, Dr. Rana Mustafa. Rana is a food scientist who has been working in Canada and internationally for more than 15 years on creating value added in food product development, and agricultural product commercialization. Rana is one of the business leads at the Global Institute for Food Security at the University of Saskatchewan. Dr. Mustafa fosters collaborations between industry and researchers, identifying funding opportunities and developing collaborative projects that brings innovative ideas from the lab to the market. In her presentation today, Rana will be sharing with us her expert opinion on the impacts of Arab cooking and pulses on agriculture innovations and research. Our second speaker is Sultan Ali Sadat. Sultan is currently the director of the human resource of Saskatchewan Open Door Society. Prior to this role, Sultan occupied the position of a cultural bridging facilitator, sharing his multicultural knowledge and experience with different businesses and organizations in Saskatchewan. Sultan holds an MBA from the University of Cape Breton, a degree in economic, a degree in commerce, diploma in accounting, and a certificate in intercultural development inventory. Sultan was born in Afghanistan, immigrated first to Pakistan in 1998, and then to Canada in 2000. In his presentation, Sultan will be sharing with us his experience and stories, highlighting the immigrant experience in Saskatchewan, gathering ingredients, making substitutions, and building a sense of community and belonging within the Arab diaspora in Saskatchewan. Our last speaker, Mr. Omar Al-Khatib. Omar is the Managing Director, Corporate Affairs at AGT Food and Ingredients Inc. In this position, Omar is responsible to direct all areas of corporate affairs, development, and services. Omar has been an instrumental member of the development and execution of AGT's global growth strategy in pulses and staple food. Omar has a degree in art from the University of Saskatchewan. He serves as the president of the board of directors for the Canada-Turkey Business Council and on the board for the Saskatchewan Regional Economic Development Authority. In 2002, Omar was appointed Honorary Consul General for Turkey in Saskatchewan. In his presentation, Omar will be sharing with us what are the benefits and the economic opportunities of growing pulses and the increasing interest in the consumption of these crops around the world. With that, I would like to ask you to give your full attention to our three speakers and help me welcoming them. We'll start with Dr. Mustafa, followed by Mr. Sadat, and finally, Mr. Khatib. I will switch to mute and I will ask Dr. Mustafa to start her presentation.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Lana, and thank you for inviting me to this event. I'm really so glad to share my thoughts and experience. I don't have a normal presentation like at like a conference or extra. It's I consider it like a friendly speech. I will start by showing you this book, which is the book that I received a few years ago before hearing of this event. I was working at the College of Agriculture as a food product development specialist, doing my research on pulses. And as a newcomer from Syria, the Ministry of Trade and the expert wanted to make a story of my work and life and career in Saskatchewan and why I am working on pulses. And the Pam from the Ministry of Trade and Export said to me, I have this book and I really don't know how to make those recipes. And I think it might relate to you. I will send it to you as a gift. when I received the book, I was shocked. It's not because it has a lot of recipes that I memorized, because I made them all the time, but the story, the answers to my questions, how did these people survive winter? What did they eat when they came 100 years ago or more? And also it answered some of my questions, because to me, as a Syrian immigrant, the Syrian community in Saskatchewan is really small, and due to the war in Syria, the number increased. And this is why you will see in the city some Syrian food restaurants and etc. So reading this book was so inspiring. So if I go back a little bit about my work at the university, when I came, I wanted to work on plant-based food. You might ask me why, because I came from that culture where we really rely on pulses, chickpeas, lentil, faba bean, bulgur. Due to the war in Syria, we had really a lot of difficulties to access food, and especially for people who are poor. Not only the logistic of the war, the financial situation was very hard. So my dream was to make something in terms of food innovation that is accessible to people who are poor, wherever they are, like in refugee camps, here, there, people who want to eat healthy, people who want to spend little bit amount of money to get that healthy food. So I started, the first project that I worked on was kind of chicken nugget replacement, and it's inspired from a very famous recipe in the Middle Eastern cuisine called falafel, which you will find in this book. And it's soaked chickpeas, chickpeas soaked in water for overnight, and then mixed in the grinder with the spices, made like balls and fried. It has special spices. So I thought, okay, why don't I use the same formulation? And so I was inspired by this formulation. I will change the spices so we make them similar to chicken nuggets, and I will make them make the formulation in a way that it's easier to work with, so we can only have a powder at the end that people can just put water to and fry it, deep fry it, or in an air fryer, whatever. So the example that I am explaining now, it's how the food formulation would be inspired by different culture, different cuisine. So that was the first inspiration. And then I worked on faba bean and egg replacement. So the water, when we soak the chickpea in water to cook it later, the cooking water has extra foaming abilities that mimic egg. So my second project was egg replacement from pulses cooking water. So you might notice how we are, as a food scientist, I was inspired by my culture, my cuisine, what I learned in back home to create things that are totally new and different. Our research team with Dr. Martorini at the University of Saskatchewan was one of the first research team all over the world to work on egg replacement. When we published our first book chapter, first paper about aquafaba, the cooking water from chickpeas, the reviewers didn't accept the word. They didn't understand that we can do something from pulses cooking water similar to egg. So we wanted to share videos with them to explain, and it was really a process. Another example, in Middle East, we eat a lot of faba bean. And I worked on a cheese replacement using my knowledge of faba bean in Syria to create a cheese, but plant-based cheese from fava bean. And when I posted photos online and when I asked my supervisor at the time, Dr. Martirini and others, to come and taste this new cheese, they were always surprised, like, how can you change the food formulation and the ingredients and end up by a product that is really tasty with the really simple ingredients? So all these examples, I hope that tells you how we can use those stories from our culture in the food innovation. I really encourage you to also read the book and look at the bulgur, at the kishk recipe that Melissa tried. However, I'm really, as you now know, I have expertise with food formulation. So what I did with the kishk that I make in my home in Saskatchewan, I have twisted the recipe to matches the environment in Saskatchewan, the fast, like the speed that we live in, like the life which is very fast. So I don't need to soak the bulgur and yogurt for 10 days, dear Melissa. I do that in 1 day, and I end up by a wonderful kishk that I make like pies instead of having pizza, vegetarian pizza that you put only vegetables. So I put this kishk on it. Another example for food innovation. Here we like everything, plant-based food, right? So another example for vegetarian pizza, you go to this book or you look for za'atar recipe, and you have that za'atar pie or chickpea paste pizza. A lot of food innovations, and I talk with local bakery in Saskatchewan here, Petra Market, and I say to them, you really need to market your vegetarian pizza or za'atar manakish as a plant-based pizza, and you will see how it's very healthy because it has chickpea on it and sesame seed and other spices. So that's all what I can say to you, and I am open for, I would like to hear if you have any question. I think I talked more than I should. I don't know if I have more time or not.
You're good. If anyone has questions, please feel free to put them in chat and I can collect them for the end. But let's keep going on and try and save those questions for the end. Lana.
Your voice broke a little bit, Anne.
Oh, sorry. I was just, if you could introduce the next person, Lana.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Our next speaker is Sultan Ali Sadat. As I mentioned before, he's the director of the Human Resource of Saskatchewan Open Door Society.
I think Lana froze. So thank you very much, Lana, for introducing me here. And it is the downfall of our technology sometime, regardless of where we are, sometimes it does not work as we plan. Thank you very much for inviting me here, Luke and Melissa and Rana for nominating me to be here, the speaker. I will start with one of the story of when I was grade 1. When you talked about fava bean, we in Afghanistan usually boil it and put some salt and pepper, and in the winter time, that's how we grew up. That was our chips. Here, people are grow up on different chips when you're listening to music or watching TV. There, we were sitting around the blanket, listening to our grandmas and having fava bean, just peeling it off and putting it aside. So I was grade 1 and we ran out of fava bean, and my mom said it's now there is no place that we could buy it. So I had that in my mind. So I went to grade 1. When I was coming back one day in the fall time, I saw this group of guys are throwing it up in the air because they were cleaning. I did not know that they were cleaning, and it falls back and nobody touched it. I came to my mom, and my mom always tell me this, I came and I asked my mom, I said, can you give me a bag? Because there's the same bean that he was looking for. There's a pile of it and the guy is throwing it out in the sky and falls back and nobody touches it. Nobody needs it. I will bring a bag full of that. And she was, every time we talk about it, she says that she never forget that day. So we had to, that fava bean was a favorite thing that we used to eat when we were having story time with grandma. Today, I will talk about the challenges of newcomers coming to Canada they're facing. I work with Open Door Society for the past many years. I work with lots of diverse group of people. We served in the past 5 or 6 years, served over people like 115 countries who came to Canada. But when I was up front, frontline workers in 2006-7, we received newcomers from different diverse backgrounds from South America to different part of African countries and also from Middle Eastern. The first challenge they faced when they were coming here, they couldn't find the spices or the food they were used to. So that's aside from so many other challenges, this was the biggest challenge. And for myself, when we came to Canada in early 2000, we couldn't find any proper spices that we were used to. Like that's all the food, regardless of every spices that was available in Superstore, Walmart. I had to go to Edmonton or Calgary to buy some spice and bring that one. That was every long weekend, which was every month when there was a long weekend, we planned to go and bring some food. Even today, the rice that we are eating, it is like one type of rice. It is a sailor rice. I cannot find it in Saskatchewan either. We order it from Toronto or we go to Calgary. That is a Shine brand or some brand that we get used to it, because I know there's lots of different rice that you see in Superstore market, but the way we cook it, the texture, we need specific rice for that one. So I don't know, we have to learn different recipes to be able to generate that. But that is one of the biggest challenge for majority of newcomers when they come to Canada. Then the second part, that when they're settled a little bit here, when they go back to their home country, they bring spices. And this is the biggest challenge. When they bring spices, the spices are sometimes withheld in the port of entry because you have to answer so many questions. They bring some seeds or some other things. So then you have to explain why you're bringing it, or you have to hide it, and that's which is not recommended. But when you go through and declare that you have this spice or this seed, they ask you if you grow it. And many people I know, they hiddenly bring seeds and they grow it here, which I believe that this textbook, when you read it, the one that was introduced about Syrian, they came to Canada or Saskatchewan in early 1900s. Today, the pulses that we have in this province is thanks to them, that they brought those seeds and planted here and then introduced some seeds to the different group of people. So when there is the need for food, newcomers, they try to find ways to bring that food either from different provinces or even US. And then once they have the demand increased to the point that people will open shops in the city that will sell those type of foods. When I compare Saskatchewan now with the time of 2000 to 2005 or 6, now we have lots of diverse shops. We have 2 Arabic or Syrian shops. One is Petra, the other is that bakery that is opened recently. Lots of Pakistani and Indian shops, because the demand was there. So now these groups of people, when they came, and then there's that added to the varieties of taste that people, or also choices of food that we can go to different restaurants in the city, from Korean, Chinese, Japanese, to at least 5 or 6 different Middle Eastern restaurants in the city, or Pakistani and Indians, because they brought their food, their restaurants, their traditions. So now I can see the diversity is much more visible in the city comparing to the time I came. So this will increase to the local produce. Some people do have produce here that is locally grown and adding to the economy of the society. So the newcomers need sometime add more to the economy, which Omar Al-Khatib will talk about the economic part of that, how pulses or any other kind of needs or any other produce or lentils or any other like food that people are coming with or bringing in the ideas here, and how people will be adding more value to the society, and it will adding more diversity to in terms of the food choices that we will have, restaurants we have. So majority of the newcomers, when they come for the first few months or few years, they have to find different replacements. They're just adding something, and then they create a new food that they may call it traditional, but later on, after a generation or 2, they find out that their grandparents or parents changed the text or some ingredient that was not original in the home country where they came from, and then they create something different. Sometimes it is much better or different in a way that is more tastier. We're having different ingredients. That is kind of, I found it as the cultural mix. So a person came with a tradition and they tried to make that food of tradition, to change it or give it to children and telling, because they have that experience of the food or the taste of the food from their mothers and grandmothers. Here they want to pass that to their children, but then because of the lack of ingredients, they added some local ingredient into it. So that is a cultural mix, which is we see the cultural diversity within the food. And I amazingly seeing that one in most of the cultures, starting from Ukrainians, and you can see it in Germans and also Chinese restaurants. If you go there, you can see the food. Many people who are coming from China, when you ask them, they say, no, this version, we don't have it in China, but we have it slightly different of that, because it is kind of localized to the point. And the same thing we have seen in Afghan restaurants or Pakistan restaurants or any other restaurants that we go to. We see that flavor of Canadian, and that's where it starts and bring people together. I am a very foodie person. I can talk about food all day, and the things that bring the society and communities together is the food. And I encourage all the time, when we had no COVID, we had potlucks at least once in a month. Open Door is a tiny, small, I'm not inviting you guys for potluck, but hopefully once we have out of COVID, we will have a park. I always had this dream that we will have a big potluck in a park, that we will ask all cultural communities to come with their food, bring the whole Saskatoon and have one day a potluck. We need the permission from the city of Saskatoon. We invite the mayor, and they can just probably get some funding and stuff putting together. We have people, we have society, we have community here that's will be the real taste of Saskatoon, something that we could have all enjoyed. Open Door Society, we used to have it once in a month before COVID, and we invited some friends. And if you will be in my friends list in the future, we can invite you, but you have to text me that we will put your name there. And we had the best food that you could ever have it in Saskatchewan or Saskatoon, because that 38, 39 countries that representing in Saskatoon Open Door Society are bringing their best, something that they grew up with, something that they were received from parents or grandparents. So this one book, one province, we hopefully get to the point to have one day of the food day, that introduction of bringing the whole Saskatoon together and having a park and enjoying that. I have 44 more seconds. I don't want to talk about it more, but I'm thankful that people invited me to be part of this. But I encourage that when newcomers are coming, sharing some of your ingredients, learning about their recipes from their cultural things, it connects people. Food and kindness are the two things that bring people together and build bridges, and building a society that we will be respectful and passing a best peaceful society to our children and grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sultan, for the interesting presentation. I will go now to introduce already Mr. Omar Al-Khatib, and I will ask him to please start your presentation.
Thank you so much, Lana. I'm very pleased to be participating on the One Book, One Province book of Arab cooking today. As introduced, I'm Omar Al-Khatib. I'm the Managing Director of Corporate Affairs with AGT Food and Ingredients. We're a processor, an exporter, and a distributor of staple foods and food ingredients, who operates 46 facilities around the world, with 24 of those facilities in Saskatchewan alone. And we're focused primarily on pulses, which include lentils, peas, chickpeas, and beans, but also other staple foods like pasta, rice, bulgur, and food ingredients, flour, starches, proteins, fibers that are derived from pulses that are used by food companies and consumer packaged food companies in their own food systems and their own products. Now, I was asked to speak about the development of the pulse industry in Saskatchewan and the economic benefits to our province. However, I'd also like to share some recollections as a child of immigrant. This book really brought forward for me as a meaningfully capturing my own cultural journey with my own family. With a bit of background, my Turkish family came to Saskatchewan in the mid-1960s, and they settled in rural Saskatchewan in Davidson, between Saskatoon and Regina, where they lived for 30 years before moving to Saskatoon. My father was the small town doctor. My mother was an elected 3 mayor, which as a Muslim woman in the 1970s, Saskatchewan was certainly no small feat. My siblings and myself, we were raised in a rural community as the children of immigrants in a farming community. And along with only a few other family community, we were the only newcomers to the province. And this certainly is a situation that has changed dramatically today. Growing up in a rural community certainly poses its challenges, many of which have been identified from a food standpoint, but also from a cultural standpoint. There's challenges that that everyone faces in that respect. And the need to continue to connect culture was important then, as it is for many newcomers and immigrant families. And this book by Habib Salloum certainly captures a part of that, how we, irrespective of whenever we came to Canada, to Saskatchewan, and whatever culture we've come from, whether it's a recent immigrant in the past year, an immigrant in the past few decades, or as in the book, immigrants at the turn of the last century at the province. We all must be diligent in ensuring that we are connected to where we come from and find ways to connect to where we are now today. I personally found many experiences in the book echoed my own experiences, although in a much more relaxed fashion. The 1970s was much easier than the Depression era prairies from availability of services and life. But connecting culture through food is critical to all cultures, and everyone brings with them every single day. I was asked to speak about the agricultural sector and the pulse sector, and these are two features that are extremely prevalent in Western Canada. We have a rich agricultural endowment in this part of the country that we've been blessed with. We have rich arable land, we have clean air, we have abundant water, and we have some of the best and most productive agricultural production that we see in the world. For decades, Saskatchewan has been known as the breadbasket of the world. However, in recent years, we've increasingly become known as the first stop on the protein highway, as our agricultural output is playing a key role in sustainably feeding the world quality protein and nutritious foods. The agricultural output is, of course, focused in Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan is on the front lines of helping to provide societal solutions to global challenges in protein, in food, and in renewable energy. Saskatchewan will be vital to the UN FAO's mission to produce the same amount of food in the next 40 years that has been produced in the past 10,000 years of civilization, all to feed a growing middle class, a burgeoning world population that may exceed 10 billion people, with climate issues and strife happening in so many parts of the world. In Saskatchewan, where we have the benefit of employing sustainable agricultural production solutions, like our 3-crop rotation, where we have canola, nitrogen-fixing pulses, and wheat combined together. We enjoy advanced agricultural production techniques and technologies that allows us to react positively and quickly to consumer demand for quality plant-based protein, environmental stewardship, and cleaner energy. To this end, Saskatchewan has become a leader in the production and the export of important protein sources for the world, pulses in particular. Pulses, with their over 10,000-year history as one of the earliest domesticated crops, lentils have fed the world for millennia. And Saskatchewan is presently the leader in export of lentils to the world, in addition to the other quality grains and oilseeds that we produce and export from the province. It's been through the commitment of our farmers, and this aired in the book where Habib's family used some seeds from relatives to grow chickpeas and lentils in the Depression era province, which, you know, as the book mentions, one of the earliest or the first instances of pulse production in the province. This production has continued, where farmers in the province have taken lentil production from only a few 100,000 metric tons 20 years ago to an average of over 2 million metric tons presently, with a significant processing infrastructure and distribution network, with companies like AGT and the University of Saskatchewan Crop Development Center leading the way with crop research to take traditional seeds from the traditional growing areas, adapting them to the conditions in the prairies. And this has really resulted in the development of an entire sector maintaining Saskatchewan's competitive advantage in agricultural production, agri-food, and lentils and pulses in the world. Now, I mentioned 2 benefits. The second benefit that Saskatchewan has is from the people who have prairies over the past century and more, and who have built the communities where we live, we work, and we play. And this has really helped to expand our worldview. The prairies, and Saskatchewan in particular, has been a region that has benefited from immigration, past immigrants and newcomers as well, over its history to grow and maintain its population. These stories in Habib's book certainly provide context for the experience of immigrants and newcomers today, which was different from the time and period that the stories originally come from. Recently, the rich mosaic of newcomers has brought a renewed view and perspective of where we come from, who we are, and how we build communities. And in so many cases, this comes down to what is on the dinner table with our friends and our families. You'll recall at the opening of my class, some of the products that I listed: pulses, staple rice, bulgur. These are mainstays of the dinner tables of large portions of the world's population. And there's certainly no stranger in the book, and I have my copy here on my desk, no stranger in the book and the experiences that were shared by Habib and his family. The stories we now have in our communities make it easier to capture the tastes of the foods that we long for, kitchens that we are familiar with from our childhood. The stories from Habib's book about growing chickpeas and lentils, or making their own bulgur as a staple, as well as the experience, which I can relate to, of just wanting to eat the same food as the other kids do sometimes, as is one that all children of immigrants can relate to. However, the experience of those traditional foods that we ate as children and that we share on our dinner tables today make us richer as individuals now that we are in our adulthood. In Saskatchewan, Canada, we do not consume a large quantity of pulses, although we do produce a lot of them and we supply the world with them. I comment in many presentations and speeches that I give that while growing up, something as common as it is today as hummus was extremely exotic 30 years ago. And imagine how much more exotic it was in the Depression era prairies, given the timing concept of Habib's book. Usually when I ask who has eaten hummus recently, often in the past, I would even have to explain what hummus was. And then after doing that, put up their hand and say they'd consumed recently, but most really didn't know what it was. Today, hummus can be found on every supermarket shelf and in most mainstream restaurant menus, all over Canada and the world. It is that familiarity that has brought the development of a whole sector of the agricultural economy to the benefit of the province, with the production and export of non-traditional crops beyond just wheat, which was the traditional crop that was grown here. And farmers have become more familiar with the production of pulses, lentils, peas, and chickpeas. And the world has come to know Saskatchewan as a production origin to produce quality pulses, lentils, peas, chickpeas, and beans for supply in their own markets all over the world. And slowly but surely, I think in Saskatchewan and in Canada as a whole, people are learning what we have known all along as newcomers to Canada, which is that pulses taste great and they're really good for you. It's through the experience of sharing at our dinner tables the different foods with our friends and our new families that have expanded all of our worldviews and led to the understanding that we are not all so different from each other. We are all the same, and we're just trying to share our experiences with those that we love, our friends and family. So with that, I'll end my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Omar. Thank you for all our speakers for amazing talks today. I will move to the questions. I'm sorry I lost my connection, where I am, and I was on and off, and I'm very sorry about that. But I will start with Dr. Mustafa. Rana, lots of people want to know about the recipe, about the quick, how to make quick recipe, quick kishk recipe, including me, please share the recipe with everybody. I remember my grandma back in Lebanon, it takes all summer, making the kishk and the burghul, it's the whole process all summer. So that would be very, very interesting to know that can be made, quick. I have a question for Rana. You spoke about the plant-based food and how can be made, and what about the cost of making that? And if the cost is high, the industry won't adopt this process and won't accept it. So can you please tell us more about the cost of making this type of ingredients or food?
Thank you, Lana. In fact, this is a very important topic to discuss the cost. I know that we live in a very energetic and fast-paced life now here in the West. And when you ask someone to make a recipe that takes more than 1 hour, it really, like, you cannot do it every day, and we go right away to buy the ingredients, and it's totally we understand that. I think in terms of plant-based food or plant-based meat replacement, if I can say, because plant-based food, we can divide it into different categories. If I eat hummus, I'm eating plant-based food. If I eat fat cake, for example, or kishk or za'atar, I'm eating plant-based food. And this is a very important question, because I remember I think in 2016 was the International Year of Pulses, and a lot of people, and even Pulse Canada, started to put recipes on their website to encourage people to eat plant-based food, pulses in general, including different chickpeas or other pulses in the diet. I found it myself hard to include pulses in any recipe. Like we can't say to people, eat just plant-based food and just without having that taste and pleasure of eating the food. So what the new trend was, okay, we want people to eat plant-based food, but we want them to feel like they are eating meat, which I personally think I prefer eat meat when I want to eat meat, but I eat plant-based food when I want to eat non-meat products. And I think I shared once with the friends, the oldest cheese ever that I can think of is tofu, and it was not called cheese replacement. And falafel is the oldest example of meat replacement or chicken replacement, and was not called chicken replacement. It was called falafel due to different reasons. And this is my point of view in that regard. So now the new trend, going back to cost, the new trend in food innovation is creating that plant-based meat replacement, which is really amazing, because it's really, like, when you look at the innovation in terms of food additives or food formulations and textures and analytics and regulation, it's really amazing. However, so far the cost is really a challenge, especially if we want everyone to be able to eat that food. If I go to the market now, I see that the plant-based burger is almost 1.5 or more, maybe double the price of the meat burger. Therefore, yes, I will choose to eat plant-based food, but I can't ignore the economics. So it's still expensive. However, due to when the consumption will increase, when more players, more innovations in the market, the more we have in terms of food innovation, food ingredient innovation, the cost will decrease. I am expecting, and not only me, like everyone knows that for now, plant-based food in terms of the final product, like cheese replacement, meat replacement, tuna replacement, you name it, all of those are available but are very expensive. But later in the near future, very near future, the cost will be reduced and people will enjoy and will have the options of eating something. It's just chickpeas thrown in a salad, or they will be able to eat those replacements. But just a side comment, very fast. I work at the Global Institute for Food Security, And here the goal is producing those pulses or plant-based food crops, let's say canola, wheat, etc., that are sustainable, resistant to climate change, use nutrient more efficiently, less fertilizer, etc. So we are also talking about different kind of crops that will be available soon in the market. Gen editing, innovation in that regard will align also with the new varieties of crops with higher protein. So if you eat peas, for example, you will have more protein that you eat in general now. So those are new innovations that will be coming soon, will open a new market. And the more we have, I think more consumption, more innovations, the cost will be reduced. Thank you.
Lana, may I add something to Rana's comments?
Of course.
The world doesn't eat meat as we do in North America, particularly in Western Canada. In our household, we eat pulses regularly. We eat pulses multiple times per week. We always have hummus in the fridge. So for us, as you know, the consumption of pulses has been something that we've just always done. However, most of the world gets their protein from non-meat sources, from pulses, from bulgur, from other sources. So we hear a lot of comment about the so-called Mediterranean diet and things like that. Well, the Mediterranean diet is really just about eating a balanced meal of grains and vegetables, pulses for protein, supplemented with fish, and not eating very much red meat. We eat. There's nothing wrong with eating red meat. I certainly enjoy that. But I echo what Rana says, that when I eat meat, I want to eat meat. I don't want to eat a replacement. In that respect, I'd rather have lentils in that meal. I'd rather have meat in a different meal, and consume everything in a balanced manner to obtain the most nutritious, best tasting food that we possibly can. The rise of plant-based has certainly become it's an important component of introducing these non-traditional products to North American and Western European consumers, because it's unrealistic to expect that Canadians, Americans, people in Europe are going to consume pulses in the same manner that they are in the Middle East, in North Africa, in Turkey, in the Indian subcontinent, where dals or hummus, peas, lentils, whatever it might be, are consumed along with rice, making a complete protein, as just a normal course of how they eat food.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for what you said, because I'm again coming from Lebanon, and I've never thought about being vegetarian or not being. I don't even think about it, because when we make a dish, it has everything. It has meat, vegetables, rice. It includes everything, and the meat is very little in the dish compared to other ingredients. So it's very interesting. My question is to first of all, I would ask the audience, to please send your questions or just raise your hand to hear your questions.
We do have one question in here for Rana. Peggy asks if she heard you say that you altered the spices for the falafel to make it more acceptable to the North American palate. Has Saskatoon's acceptability of foods like falafel changed since then?
I think I have no idea if they changed their taste for that, but I know that through my experience, and I think Sultan talked about it as well, we have cultural differences and we have food memories. So when I, for example, introduce falafel and I give it to you and you will eat it, you will like it, I will create new memories, you will like it, later on you want the same memories. And this is what we are also working on as a food product development person. We try to, when we develop a product, we try to create those memories so people like the taste and continue liking the same taste. And this is why when I alternate the recipe and I say to the consumers, this is the recipe and this is falafel. Of course, I know myself that I changed it, twisted, because the taste, the palate is different, is connected to our background and to so many factors. And we cannot eat exact food that we ate back home. I will give you a very simple example. In Syria, we don't eat barley at all. It's only for animal feed. In North America, the first time I mentioned faba bean, they looked at me like it's for feed, not for animal, like for a human. So see the difference in cultural preferences and cultural background. So it's all about changing. For example, when I used to make cookies from chickpea, gluten-free cookies, the texture, I noticed the differences. From my cultural background, we like everything crispy and crunchy. Here, people like to have things with some moisture in it. So there are so many details that I discovered when I was doing my research. And this is why in the lab, we have food sensory analysis lab, where we, when I finished my research project, I go to that lab and I invite people to taste the product and write scores. And at the end of that scores, you will see that really people from different background, they have different preferences. So when this product goes to the market, of course, I was doing my research. It was not like a business that I opened, but in general, if a new business wants to start, it's all the same. I know my daughter brings home some falafel from, I remember one time I went to the university, Place Royale, and there is falafel. I wanted to eat it. I went there and eat it, and I said to my daughter, it's not my falafel. So see, it's really different. But I totally understand that we need to change it because people want this, not the same exact taste. There is some twist in the formulation.
Well, thank you, Rana, for your inputs, and really amazing. I'm from Lebanon, you are from Syria, and we have very little, and we share probably 99% of the culture and the food, but still, I can say, oh, this is from Lebanon, this is from Syria, so it's like very little difference that you can, you keep it for yourself, for the directly related to your culture. And I think Omar and Sultan may agree with me, little bit difference in the Turkish ingredients, and so that makes it Turkish, but most of the ingredients are the same. Yeah, I think so. I have a question to Sultan. Sultan, you arrived here in 2000 to Canada. So how do you see the changes in the culture, the food culture, among people coming from abroad, new immigrants, since you work directly with the new immigrants, it's everything is available now in the market, all ingredients. You go to any supermarket, big super, and you probably find lots of ingredients for any culture. So tell us about the switch, how did that, what's your experience, since 2000 compared to now, 20 years ago, more?
Thank you, Lana. The experience is very obvious. If you see, even right now, we have two Costco in the city. One is the south and one is the north, or one is the old one and one is the new one. If you go to the new Costco, they have dedicated one lane only for Punjabi. You can see ghee there. You can find the full lamb there, like lamb is in a bag, so you can find a full lamb. You can find certain things. These big companies always look at where they can get money. You cannot find those things in the south, in the north Costco, which was the old Costco, because they want to tailor it to the need of the area, because the new Costco is close to Rosewood, Stonebridge, which is a lot of East Indian Punjabis are there. Punjabi use a lot of ghee. For all of their food, they use butter, like this is the animal fat, which is coming from milk. But then you can see it on the South Costco, not that many, because the new Costco is close to the masjids. They have halal lamb. You don't see it, that one in the old Costco. 20 years ago, you couldn't see any spices in Superstore. Now the whole aisle or 2 aisles are dedicated to different cultural. They have a red sign. It's called International Spices or International Food. That was not there. With all that one, it's not covering the number of people or the group or cultural groups that we have in the city or representative of the city, but they are just representing biggest culture or bigger cultures that are in the city. I see some small shops of Jamaicans in the city, a restaurant from, I think there was one open but then closed. Lots of restaurants opening every year. As you notice, one time when I was in university doing my undergrad, we did a research and marketing class to see how many restaurants opens in Saskatoon. We had the biggest number of eateries. We had 823 restaurants that year. And every year there was about 102 to 105 restaurants are opening. By the end of the year, there was only 7 to 10 restaurants were surviving to go to next year because the demand, they try it, they come, they think about it, but then the demand is not there, so they can't survive much. And then some of those restaurants go after 2 or 3 years, then they close. But now I saw multiple restaurants. We had this Turkish restaurants in the city for many years, struggled in different part of the city. They closed because the demand was not there. We have luckily a Lebanese kitchen survived for many years and do have few. The biggest restaurants that survive is the Indian Pakistani restaurant. The Afghan restaurant, if you notice, there's one in the city. If you look at, that's why no Afghan goes there because the spices changed. The taste is not there. The kebab that Afghan wants to eat should be cooked on charcoal, not on a gas. So that's the taste is different. So that's what, if you see it, 50%, now it's owned by Pakistani, from Pakistan. So they put their own spices on Afghan food. So an Afghan wants to go there because they say it's taken away the taste, that the taste buds are not there. But the diversity has changed. You can see a lot of spice, lots of people have access to a lot of varieties of things now, probably about 1,000% more than what we had at the time, comparing to 2000. We couldn't find a single spice like I couldn't find cardamom in the city. I had to go to Edmonton to buy cardamom for tea, just because our tea, we don't want to drink it unless there's a cardamom 1 or 2 piece inside the tea. So that's where we make some sherbets or something that you put the cardamom flavor on it. Or now you can see saffrons. You can see a lot. Like in Afghanistan, we have, I think, before the Taliban took over, was one of our second biggest country producing saffron. They use it in rice. They use it in making halwa. They use it in everything. But here it is too expensive to have one tiny piece of saffron. There you could buy a pound of it with the same price. So these are the things that you can see. It's like the changes of the spices are there, but the price, some of them are very pricey. Still, people prefer to go to different cities or provinces to go and buy those spices, because here, paying for 100 grams in Superstore, you could go and buy a pound from Edmonton or Calgary, because there is a local shop from that country will tailor it or buy. Because Superstore or Costco or Walmart, they try to overrun those small shops because they bring volume, but they will not bring the right spice or the right amount that people need to use it. There's still room for growth. That's, if I conclude it, we still have room for growth.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your stories and experience. I have 2 questions. I think Omar can answer these questions. The first one is from Picky Sargent and from the audience. She's asking, will climate change, for example, increasing drought possibility, have an impact on the production of pulses in Saskatchewan?
Well, certainly climate change is impacting agricultural production everywhere. Last season, for example, while not directly climate-based, we did suffer from drought conditions in the province, which certainly decreased agricultural yields overall in the province. I mean, and that, resulted in less product being grown. Generally speaking, pulses, the specific varieties of pulses that are grown in Saskatchewan, the Crop Development Center has extensive work in ensuring that characteristics within the plants are optimized for the environment that we live in. Generally speaking, lentils are a low water usage product. The joke within the industry is that lentils only need water twice a year, twice in their process, once when they're planted and once when they're cooked. So there's very little water that's needed. The rainfall that it receives in the province as the plant is growing, and then heat to allow the pot to fill and dry for harvest. Climate change is certainly a component of it, but as I mentioned in my comments, the sustainable agricultural production with zero minimum tillage, lower nitrogen, the lack of need for application of fertilizer with pulses of nitrogen in the soil certainly is playing a positive role in the environmental footprint of pulses within the overall agricultural production system. Climate change is of a concern for everywhere in the world, particularly with the burgeoning population and increasing middle class and increasing need for food security in many regions, displaced peoples, refugees increasing. The world, as I mentioned, it's a staggering statistic that the UN states that we have to produce the same amount of food in the next about 40 years as the past 10,000 years of civilization. And that's just staggering as a concept, but it's the reality as we approach 10 billion people in the world. So climate change is a component of that, something we all need to be aware of and do what we can to ensure that we are positively impacting the environment. And I think that Saskatchewan and our great farmers and the farm families we have in communities all over the province are really playing their part in ensuring that that the province does what it can from a production standpoint to be a steward of the environment and protect the planet that we live on.
I have one more question. I know we don't have time, but it's a quick one. I hope the answer, I don't know, but it's about the war, the war on Ukraine and the problem of food security. I know from Lebanon, they have problem with wheat because they import, wheat from Ukraine and many other Arabic countries. How Saskatchewan is going to react regarding that? Are farmers going to switch from pulses to growing wheat, or pulses are going to be a substitute, to increase the export to these countries? How Saskatchewan is going to react, from your experience to this shock in the market?
Well, as I mentioned, Saskatchewan farmers follow a 3 rotation. So they plant canola, which is then followed with the pulse crop that replenishes nitrogen, which is then followed with a cereal. So in any given growing season, we'll see about 30%, 30 to 35% in canola, about 30 to 35% in cereal grain, and then the balance would be in pulse crops. And that is partially for preserving soil health, combating disease in the soil, ensuring that yields are maximized with adequate nitrogen in the soil and everything like that. So, Saskatchewan grows ample products for export. We consume very little of what we produce. Certainly, in a condition like this in Ukraine, there are opportunities for Saskatchewan farmers and farm families and the communities across the province for economic benefit, as Russia has become, Russian product is not being imported into those Middle East, North Africa regions, particularly through the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus, down through the Mediterranean. Canada is becoming a supply origin for those regions in Turkey, Algeria, Tunisia, all sorts of locations like that for wheat. We've always been a supply pulses as the largest pulse exporter in the world. Even countries that have sufficient domestic production are to Canada for additional products, to stockpile, to combat food security concerns, to ensure that, you know, food stockpiles are available for when their populations will need it, irrespective of what might happen. Canada's being an origin, Saskatchewan is being an that the world is turning to for, you know, that they need. And we talk in Saskatchewan about this, you know, food, fuel, and fertilizer. Saskatchewan has what the world needs, and in times of conflict in the world, you know, Saskatchewan is looked to as a component of societal problems and helping to ease the strain globally, to ensure that, you know, people are fed and the world keeps working.
Yeah, thank you. I hope, you know, this war will end, but yeah, I mean, Canada needs to help. Yeah, so that's one way. With that, I will thanks again our speakers, Rana, Sultan, and Omar, for their beautiful and really amazing presentations. And it's difficult to end this panel. We can stay here probably for more 2 hours chatting and talking, but we have to say goodbye. And thank you again for everybody for joining us today, celebrating the Arab Cooking on a Prairie Homestead by Habib Salloum. And this is really an amazing book. Thank you everybody for being with us today. Thank you.